Hi YouTube, this is Megan with the Pagan Perspective, and today we're talking about karma. Hi YouTube, so welcome to Pagan Perspective. Today we're talking about karma. We have a great question from, I'm going to butcher this, I'm sure, 3 Krisos. It's 3 Krisos. I have a question about karma cleansing ritual. It's for personal karma, but what about ancestral karma? What ritual for releasing this problem on my shoulders? How do I do it with a magic ritual? I think it's important as this could release low vibrations. So, karma. It's an interesting topic because it's something that Eastern religions and many pagans share. Many pagans believe in karma and generally follow some of the tenets of karma, particularly in the Wiccan belief of the rule of 3. The idea, the energy you put out comes back to you threefold. Very similar to karma. I do believe in karma. I do believe that the energy that we put out into the universe comes back to us. I don't necessarily believe the way that the Buddhists do or Hindus do. It's a little bit different than that. So I wouldn't exactly call it karma in my personal practice, in my family's tradition, but it's basically the same thing. The idea is you reap what you sow. This is a really common thread in many religions. The idea that whatever you put out there, you get back. It's one of those human things. So the idea of ancestral karma, though, goes a little bit deeper. Ancestral karma is pretty specific to Eastern religions, though I'm sure there are many pagans who use it. So here's the part in which maybe you won't like so much. I can't give you a ritual. And the reason why I can't give you a ritual is because I follow a family tradition. That means that I don't share my rituals, my family's rituals, with anyone else who's not of the blood or married into the blood. Unfortunately. However, I can share with you in general some of the things that you might want to incorporate into your own ritual in order to cleanse your family of any of this ancestral karma, any of this negative baggage that your family has been carrying around generationally. So one of the things that I do in my line of work, I actually deal with families and a lot of generational trauma. So generational trauma is this idea that the things that have happened in your family's past, they get passed down through the generations and they actually affect you. For example, slavery is generational trauma. It is something that somebody today might not be experiencing full-on slavery. They're not chained up. They're not owned by somebody else. But if their ancestor was, that trauma actually gets passed down to them. And this is something in the therapy world that we really have to look at very closely and treat with a lot of sensitivity, because that generational trauma can have huge psychological repercussions. So when we talk about this ancestral karma, this idea that all of this negative baggage that a family has that's being passed on from generation to generation, it does affect us. We know this psychologically. It also affects us energy-wise. It affects us on a spiritual level. So the idea of needing to cleanse that ancestral karma is really important, especially if you know that there's been a lot of negative things in your family's past and you want to move forward with a clean slate. So some of the things to think about for a ritual are certainly bringing up the names of the generations past. So go to your family tree, go on ancestry.com, anything you can think of, but get the names of your ancestors. Find out what happened. Find out some of these specific events that occurred that are causing this rift and this disturbance in your karma. The next step, particularly if you can't do that, this is really important, and that is to meditate. Go on some spiritual journeys and figure out really spiritually what is the biggest thing that is blocking you. Meditation is key. You need to go back, you need to go deeper and find out, okay, what is really at the root of this? Because that's one of the only ways you're really going to tackle it. The next step for this is also going to be to make sure that you really take a look at planetary correspondences, color correspondences, lunar cycles, all of this. Make sure that you're lining everything up with the type of thing that you need to do. Now, I know this sounds a little bit vague, but what I mean is that if your family, for instance, had a child out of wedlock, 100 years ago or something, and the child was tossed away or given to somebody else to raise, right? Say something like that happened and it was a big scandal for the family. Very hush-hush, a lot of shame around it. This would be something that you would want to incorporate into your ritual. You would want to have specific herbs, specific planet correspondences, all things that help around your specific problem. If it's betrayal, if it's shame, if it's grief, if it's death, you want to tailor make your ritual specifically to what the trauma and what the negative past is in your family. It needs to be very specific. Ancestral karma isn't one of those things you can just wipe clean with a easy kind of worksheet of a spell. It's actually really deep work. It's pretty big work, and I commend you for wanting to take it on, and I really wish you luck with this. And for those of you who are thinking about maybe needing to do this on your own, I highly recommend getting as much information as you can about your family and do a lot of the homework first. Then you set up your ritual from there. Basically, everyone's going to have a little bit of a different setup here. Everyone takes a different spin on it. The way that my family sets up a ritual is going to be probably very different than the way that other pagans set up rituals. So I'm not going to go into that here. Again, like I said, those are protected information. I can't give it out. I'm sorry. I wish I could. But I can't. So the best I can do is tell you some of the things to get you on your path. And primarily, my biggest advice is to research. And also, I would suggest working through some of your generational trauma. If you know that there's a lot of negative history in your past, your family's past, I should say, make sure that you learn as much as you can about it so that you can combat it. It's really important. The other thing that I think is really important here is to make sure that you are understanding about the past. Sometimes we get this idea about the way things were at one point, and we can place a lot of judgment, and we forget that it was a different place and time, and the rules were different then. So always remember, judge yourself, judge your family, with a grain of salt. You want to keep the lines of communication open. You want to keep an open heart, because karma begets karma. So if you place a lot of judgment on the negative past of your family, that's going to come back on you. Karma works both ways. So keep an open mind, and I think you'll do just fine. So hopefully that answered your question. I really don't have a ton, unfortunately, to say about the karma ritual, mainly because my family is really focused on that. We clear ourselves quite frequently of all our excess baggage and karma, and we try not to keep a lot of excess stuff around. And the stuff that is around that isn't sort of magical in nature, we deal with in a therapeutic sense. So it's just one of those things that every family has to kind of look at for themselves and figure out what's best for them. But I really commend you on your journey. And karma for me in general is one of those wonderful things that is the great equalizer. It is what makes every day worth putting in the extra effort, is to know that what you're putting out, you get back. And I really think that it's something that crosses many religious barriers and boundaries, and you can find almost everywhere. So thanks for writing to us and having that question. If there's anything else that you want to know, I'm hoping that some of the other subs will address it, particularly with more specifics about the ritual, because I can't give that to you. Sorry again. But so this is the last week of break. I really enjoyed being able to be here multiple weeks in a row. It was a lot of fun. And I'll be back at the end of the month for the next subs week. And until then, everyone, blessed be.